Welcome to the True Crime Cafe. I'm Becky.
And I'm Angie, and you won't believe the case I have for you today.
So, what do you have for me, Angie?
I have a decade of unknown for you today.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So, first of all, I'm going to apologize if we've done this story. Either we did it and we forgot, or I had a very, very vivid dream where we recorded this.
Okay.
And we actually haven't.
That's kind of uncanny because on the day that we're recording this, Sandman released on Netflix, and I just spent a good chunk of the morning watching trailers for it because I can't watch an episode without my husband. We're that kind of couple. You know, I don't want to have to get the cake that says, I'm sorry I watched an episode without you.
Right.
Sandman is all about dreams and nightmares and stuff. So that's cool that you may have had a dream about this.
Maybe it's from researching it and getting my notes together or whatever, but I swear it feels like we have recorded this.
I don't remember it, if that helps.
I did go back and check our list of recordings and I did not see it. So
I am in the half century club, so I could be remembering wrong. Who knows?
So J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hawlett, both 17, were enjoying their summer break in 1999 until one fateful night. Around 10:05 p.m. on July 31st, the girls left Dothan, Alabama to attend a birthday party in Headland, which was just a few miles north. At 10:30, they stopped at a gas station in Headland and used a payphone, presumably to call friends to get better directions to this party. After that call, the girls somehow ended up in Ozark, Alabama, which is about 24 miles northwest of Headland.
Yeah.
Still not ringing a bell? At approximately 11:30 p.m., the girls stopped at a store in Ozark and Tracie called her mom.
Right.
During the call, Tracie said they had gotten lost and ended up in Ozark and that they were just going to come home. The girls got directions back to Dothan from a mother and daughter that were at that same store where they stopped and headed on their way. Around 8 a.m. the next morning, Tracie's mom reported her missing after realizing she had never returned home.
Huh?
At the same time, a police officer in Ozark found JB's car. It was muddy. The doors were locked. The driver's side window was open a little bit. The gas tank was almost empty, and they had filled it up before they left.
Okay.
JB's driver's license was on the dashboard, so it wasn't in her wallet or her pocket or whatnot. In addition, both girls' purses were inside the car with some money. So far, there's no trace of the girls, just there's stuff that's been left behind.
Identity theft wasn't a huge thing in 1998 that I can recall, not like it is now. So there are IDs being there and their purses and everything being there tells me it probably wasn't a robbery, which means it was probably something worse. But I'll let you get to that before my imagination goes wild.
And this is the part that made me very angry. 6 hours after arriving on the scene, police realized that they could use the interior latch and finally open the trunk of the car. 6 hours? It took them 6 hours?
In 1998 and before,
99.
before these times, because my youngest was born around that time. But I was in college in the early 90s. And if we left the window open a little bit and the car was locked and the keys were in the car, the first thing we do is, hey, who has a coat hanger? We can open it. We can, even if the window was closed, there are ways to do it.
But I'm saying, how does it take you 6 hours to realize that there's a latch inside the car to open the trunk?
That's if you're in the car. Sorry, I thought you were talking about a latch for opening the car door from the inside.
No.
If you're in the car, it's standard on vehicles at that point, pretty much.
I thought so in the late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, I don't know what year her car was, so maybe it was an older car.
No, it was a fairly common feature for cars at that point.
I thought so, if I was remembering correctly.
So I remember they also had a switch to open the gas tank, and the gas tank had a key. leak because for some reason, I guess siphoning gas was a huge problem back then. But the trunk I thought was standard pretty much by that point. If it wasn't on her car, the knowledge that that feature existed was pretty common, or it should have been.
You would think. So inside the trunk lay the bodies of JB and Tracie.
Oh no.
Both girls had been shot, Tracie in the temple and JB in the right cheek. A 9mm shell casing was found in the trunk with the bodies. Both girls were still clothed. However, their pants were wet up to the knees and their shoes were muddy, indicating they were shot outside of the vehicle and then put in the trunk of the vehicle.
No.
Autopsy showed no signs of rape, but semen was found on some of their clothing.
Okay.
Police also recovered a palm print from the trunk lid.
Okay.
So the police developed 4 suspects. One of those suspects was Johnny William Barentine, who was 28 years old at the time.
Okay.
He left home to go buy milk for his son at 11:30 p.m. the same night the girls went missing. However, he did not return home until 1 a.m. His wife said he was visibly upset when he got home, and he said that he had been hit by a black truck with Dothan tags. Now, I know some states where we live, Becky, it does not happen, but some states do include the county in which the car is registered. So Alabama apparently is one of them.
Okay.
A while later, he
Okay.
said he had information about the murders. On September 1st, 1999, he went to the police. He was interviewed for 4 hours, during which he told the police officers 6 different stories. Now, most people, when they're being interrogated, I love the look on your face. Most people, when they're interrogated for suspicion of any crime, they try to distance themselves from the crime. Based on the research that I could find, his story seemed to put him closer and closer to the crime. He did end up confessing to the police that he had committed these crimes.
Okay.
After he confessed, he was arrested on 2 counts of capital murder. He very quickly retracted his confession,
Okay.
saying that he had been coerced into saying it. It happens. We've all seen cases.
We've seen evidence on some of these new true crime TV shows where they have the video camera in like the upper corner of the ceiling, and you can see some of the ways that police have quite legally said certain things that coerced a confession.
Police are allowed to lie.
Yep.
I get it, especially when it's a murder
Mm-hmm.
or assault or crime against a child.
Yeah.
I don't think it's wrong that the police can lie to somebody.
I don't either, especially if they're using it as a scare tactic in situations where there is more than one person and there are 2 suspects who know each other. Well, your buddy already ratted you out when the buddy didn't say a word.
Yeah.
And try to, what? No, let me tell you what he did, blah, blah, blah. And then they get the full story. I can totally see using it in specific situations.
So, in addition to him retracting his confession,
Mm-hmm.
his DNA did not match what was found at the scene. Remember, there was semen found at the scene, even though the girls had not been assaulted. Barentine was released from jail on December 17th, 1999, after the grand jury declined to indict him.
Okay, so like 3 months-ish.
He was in jail for, about 3 months, September.
So did his handprint didn't match either then?
It didn't mention anything about that.
Okay.
But you have to remember, back in 99, it wasn't like there was this huge national instantaneous, I'm going to load your prints into the system. Back then, if you had never been arrested before, your fingerprints weren't on file anywhere.
True. And they still were doing the old school with the ink fingerprint.
Yes.
Whereas now it's all digital and lasers and infrared and whatever technology.
But even if he had committed a crime that required his fingerprints to be taken, if it was in a neighboring jurisdiction, they didn't necessarily have access to that.
Right. And also, nothing against the South. I live here and I adore it. But some of these small southern towns are not the most technologically advanced as far as taking evidence and logging. And so,
yes.
And the internet was still very new then.
Yep. So I couldn't find any information about the other 3 original suspects. Remember, because there was 4 originally. But regardless, none of the information panned out to be able to indict any of these suspects. Eventually, the DNA that was collected at the scene was uploaded to a database where anyone can share their data from DNA companies. Ancestry, what is it, 23andMe?
Yeah, 23andMe, MyHeritage. I mean, there's a bunch of them now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also GEDmatch, the giant one. I've done my ancestry DNA, met some cousins I never would have met otherwise, helped one find her biological parent. That was cool. And one of the things I did was upload it to GEDmatch. And we talked about this in a previous episode too.
Mm-hmm.
And because we debated whether or not you should check that box that says, I want to make this available to the police, which I did. But yeah, you can upload it a lot of different places now.
Once it was uploaded, it revealed matches equivalent to relatives of the crime scene DNA. That information, coupled with other information the police had, helped police close in on a single suspect. On March 16th, 2019, 45-year-old Polly McNarney was arrested.
Okay.
Now, for the last
20 years later.
Huh?
This was 20 years later.
Yes, 2 decades of the unknown.
Wow.
Apparently, I couldn't math that night.
It's okay. You need a lot of coffee to math. I've tested it.
Mm-hmm. For the last 3 years, prosecutors and the defense attorneys have been going back and forth, filing motions, doing all that court stuff.
Oh.
And Coley's trial has not started yet. It is currently been postponed until August 15th, 2022. So from when we're recording, about a week and a half, 2 weeks,
Okay.
his trial is finally supposed to start.
Wow. I wonder if I'll have it on like court TV or something, because that'd be interesting to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's the tragic story of 2 teenagers who left to go to a birthday party. And
Now, is this solely based on the DNA? It didn't say anything about his handprint matching?
it didn't say anything about the handprint itself.
Okay.
However, it said the DNA matches coupled with other information that they have.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I mean,
Do we know anything about this guy otherwise?
not that I cared to look up.
Yeah.
Like, I try to give as much information as I can.
Yeah.
However, I am a victim. I try to be victim focused. That and his trial hasn't started yet. So I didn't want to look into him, because who knows what's true, what's not.
Exactly.
I didn't find any newspaper articles or reliable source articles that mentioned too much about him.
And that you just said something that I think is a very, very good point to anyone who is doing their own research, whether they belong to something like uncovered.com or they want to do their own podcast or anything like that. But you use the phrase reliable source. And I think that's important because it's the internet. There are a ton of sources. One of those is Facebook. It's not a great source. It can be a source, but I wouldn't call it a reliable source. Wikipedia is not.
Oh
my gosh, it's so unreliable.
A reliable source.
No.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I typically, when I'm researching a case, I start at Wikipedia, but I scroll all the way down and get their external links to see where their information came from.
Yep. And they're very strict about those links. I helped a person of notoriety build their Wikipedia page, and I was tasked with going and finding reliable sources to use at the bottom. And I was kind of shocked at some of the things that are allowed and some of the things that are not. Off the top of my head, I don't have any specific examples, because I didn't know we were going to be talking about this, but they are really strict. And if something is even close to being gossip or hearsay, they will strike it. The more sources you have, the better. You have to really niche down and tag all your little sources as much as possible. And you have to have, I think, a minimum number. I don't know if it's required, but it's suggested at least. So that's a great point about going down and looking at the sources on the Wikipedia page. Because one of my favorite ways to pass time is to just click random page on Wikipedia and see what comes up.
Oh, cool. Like I said, I typically, because I Google very general, broad terms, so it always 9 times out of 10 it brings up Wikipedia in the lists. But like I said, I'm not saying I don't use anything from Wikipedia, because I do, but only if I can verify it through a third party.
Exactly.
So I know where it originated.
Yep. I start with Google and broad terms like you. And sometimes then I'll just click the news category to only get the news post. Yeah. And even then, some of the posts are from gossip magazines.
Yeah. I've had Reddit show up in the news.
Yeah.
Yeah, Reddit is not a news tab.
No, it's not. But sometimes people in Reddit will share links to news articles.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that's
what I'm saying. Reddit itself is not.
No, not by itself. That would be like using Facebook or worse, Twitter.
Or TikTok or Instagram.
Any of those,
Social media is not considered a reliable source in general. There are exceptions.
Yes, there are. I have a case coming up where the victim's mother is very active on social media. And the case is so popular around here that there's no way, it's a local one to me, and there's no way I would cover it without reaching out to a family member first to say hey, look, I would like to cover this case, but I want to do it in a respectful way towards your missing person. And, is there anything you would like me to know? Is there anything topic you'd like me to avoid? Being a parent myself, I can empathize to some point. Our kids thankfully only went missing for a couple hours one time. That was enough for me to take my helicopter parenting to a PhD level. So I just want to make sure that I contact this parent first. But if they were not so active on social media, I would just rely on news sources and do my best. But because of how active they are, I think it's easier to approach them.
Definitely.
Yeah. So that would definitely be a case where I would use social media for one of our cases.
I'm just saying.
As a general rule, no.
As a general rule, social media is not a reliable source. However, I follow multiple news agencies on Facebook. So when they post something, it's usually a reliable source to use. However, I wouldn't use, and I'm just using you, I wouldn't use Becky as a reliable source for
air quotes around reliable source
to get firsthand knowledge or to get research knowledge for a murder that happened in California.
Right. I've never been west of the Mississippi. How would I know?
Exactly. Careful where you're getting your news from, your sources. I never just use one source for my cases. I usually have a minimum of 3.
Same.
There was one case that I did, human trafficking survivor stories. I actually had 7 or 8.
Yeah. And in our last episode, you heard me mention People Magazine, an online newspaper from the state, and this news article from the whatchamacallit Gazette or whatever.
Yeah. So that's the tragic story of JB and Tracie.
Interesting. And I can't wait to hear how the court winds up. So I'm looking forward to a part 2 on this one.
Yes. It's not very often that I cover recent cases like this. I mean, I know the actual crime itself isn't recent, but the arrest and the trial for the person accused is very recent, as in it just happened and it's getting ready to happen. So, I'm interested to see what the outcome of the trial is. Stay caffeinated.
And join us next time for another cup of crime.